Hello everyone, my name is Omega Zero, and today I wanted to talk about basically my new obsession, being Shin Megami Tensei IV, because I have finally been able to purchase it off Amazon at a reasonable price and not bankrupt myself, trying to buy its spin-off slash sequel title, Apocalypse. And I just kind of wanted to talk about it in the sense of the alignments and the way that you kind of just progress through the story. Currently, right now, on my first playthrough of the game, I am in the neutral. And for those of you who don't know, when you play Shin Megami Tensei, there's three choices you have for in terms of alignment, and in the case of four, there's four endings. But I'll explain it. Now you have your law, your neutral, and your chaos. Law is pretty self-explanatory. You kind of just want to stay with the natural order things that you don't want to rock the boat too much. Chaos basically wants you to upend the whole system and live by your own rules. Basically, if it, like say you can still live in a community, but pretty much everyone stays to themselves. Help your neighbor. That's all. Do what you want. In the idea of chaos for this game, or at least in chaos in general, not for this game particularly. And then you have the neutral side, which tries to have it where you want to save both sides and say, I want to live by this side, I like this point, I like that point, but you don't want to go to the extremes. Case in point, you have your characters being Jonathan for law, Walter for chaos, and Isabeau for neutrality, with your character kind of fitting in there and trying to break a side where they will ultimately lose. Whoever you side with ultimately wins in the end out of all these, and the other two are eliminated. Spoilers, but this game's like almost 8 years old at this point. I believe it is. So, I just want to kind of talk about it, and the whole point of me be seeing the endings and me thinking about it, like these are probably some of the quote unquote like worst endings for the series. Because when you first start off with Shin Megami Tensei, you're kind of going through a name. You name your character like, he remembers. Like, he remembers his name. Case in point, I probably won't have Shin Megami Tensei 4 footage playing here. I'll probably have 3, because that's the only one I can record off, because I don't have an Elgato to record off my 3DS. And then you kind of get through a flashback city. You're in like a burning city of Tokyo, and then you see one of the points, and you see the person being Walter, or at least you see their silhouette, and then you're in an expansive desert, and then you see the ending with Jonathan, or at least his silhouette. And you're wondering, like, why is Walter in the burning city? Why is Jonathan in the desert? You don't see Isabeau during this, because, like I said, Isabeau's neutrality in this case. Now, personally, going through all the endings and seeing it, both of the extremes of these characters, because SMT4 seems like to like its extremes a heck of a lot more than it does with, from what I can see, the other ends. With SMT4, the law ending is far more extreme than I believe what most law endings are, and the chaos ending is pretty extreme in and of itself. With the law enemy, you basically you try to preserve your own kingdom, your own hometown, and by doing so, you have to wipe out this whole civilization that's basically underneath it and commit. How do I say this without getting in trouble? Mass extinction, I guess, is the best thing I can say. Extinction of the people below you, and by doing so, you probably end up. You sacrifice yourself. It's probably one of the worst endings, I think, for law, because you're trying to preserve the natural order of things, but in doing so, you basically become a zealot and say, my kingdom matters, no one else does. For chaos, you want freedom rules by all, and you side with, oh gosh, probably the title is like I'm gonna get excommunicated from my church or something. You end up siding with the demon lord Lucifer, and then you try to take the fight to the angels and tell them to get GTFO out of Tokyo, where might makes right. But in doing so, you kind of screw over everyone in Mikado, and basically kind of force them all to come live in there and basically become slaves. So it's like the whole thing, and you're like, oh wow, you side with Walter, with Chaos, and you side with Jonathan with Law, and both of them essentially end up coming. I want to say I don't want to say possessed because it's not really, because they end up giving themselves willingly, so they basically become the vessels for their respective alignment characters. Merkaba for Law, meaning the chariot of God and carrying out His will, and for the case of Chaos, Walter ends up becoming like the vessel for Lucifer. And you notice, okay, he's like, oh yeah, what about Isabel? Well, Isabel basically just dies in every single ending besides neutral. Because in the neutral ending, you side with her in the sense that you try to preserve everyone from Mikado and 321 spoiler Tokyo underneath it, and try to basically come up with the best solution for everyone that can survive. The only one, let me rephrase that. Because she basically just goes against you in every ending, with the exception of the other exceptional ending, where you're kind of in an area. She goes against you when you're trying to destroy Tokyo. In the Law endings, like, you're committing genocide, and the answers that unnerve her, basically, if you want to unnerve her, which is what you want to do with a lot of the boss fights, either side with them or unnerve them, you get a point of where she thinks you're just blind zealotry on both sides, where Demon Lord Lucifer is saying, anyone who stands in my way, I will crush them, slaughter them, cast them aside, something to effect. And just, it's essentially the same thing for Law. Like, if you stand in their way, they're just going to kill you because you're in the way of the quote-unquote natural order of things. Because in SMT, demons are basically just the impulses and desires of humans, because you have the void in a sense. The axiom is basically like the will of the universe. Humans believe certain things, and basically if enough humans believe in something, it just pops into existence. Case in point, enough humans believe in the fact that there's a singular creator God, where they call it God, Buddha, or something, whatever. It exists in that universe, and it will pop a point. In case point, God actually exists in there, except this will really get me in trouble if my grandma listens to this, or if anyone from my church sees this. Basically, in the SMT universe, God's always kind of depicted as a prick who doesn't really care for humanity or anything that lives there. He just cares if they worship him, and that's all it really truly cares about, so it can kind of preserve its own existence in a sense. And therefore, that's why Lucifer never really dies. That's why the angels never really die, because as long as humans believe in it, it's going to come back eventually. So even if you were to say, like, oh, there is no God, or if God's a prick and you kill God, because that's what you can do in SMT or any Japanese RPG game ever, it's just like, I will never truly die. I will always come back so long as that humanity desires it. It's the point, like, you can kill God. I think canonically in like SMT, like, God has died like at least twice, and he has come back over time, because like, oh yeah, he's just gonna show up again eventually, because humans will just never get off that desire. But you don't actually fight God in this game, in at least the base game of SMT4, which is the one I have. If you buy the DLC, the Ancient One of Days, where you basically journey to one of the futures, the possible futures you can end up, you do fight an aspect of God called the Ancient of Days, who can go screw itself in terms of boss fight, how difficult it is. And another one for the Chaos ending, you fight Sanat, and he claims that this is the fifth humanity. He's the point, like, I'm assuming, like, you could say that humanity has died off like 3 or 4 times, or a few times in the past, or this humanity that he's visited, that the fifth humanity he's come across. But going back to like the whole alignment thing, like, or talking about how alignment works in SMT, you are given a set of choices throughout the game to kind of like determine your alignment. When you first start off, you have 0 points, and you can have like a maximum of 100 or negative 100. If you're at 100, if you're above in the positives, you're lawful, and if you're in the negatives, you're chaotic. To be in the neutral range, I believe you have to be like between 8 and negative 8. And I believe there's a problem. I think someone said there's actually a problem, like you can't be too neutral. By being too neutral, I think you actually lock yourself out of the demon ending, like, or the neutral ending. and then you actually are put into one of the alternate endings. But you basically like choose like the quote unquote right answers. Like say someone asks like, "Oh, will you help me?" You're like, "Yeah, sure, I'll help you." Or like, "Nah, I don't want to do it." Like you'll be forced into a point where like, I don't want to do it. Alright, no, nah. Like you kind of see it quick. Alright, case in point, when there's a tournament in the game, like you could choose to spare your opponent, or you could choose to kill him. Sparing your opponent actually gets the crowd mad at you, but it gives you good points. But if you kill your opponent, it gives you negative points, but the crowd cheers for you. They don't show any like the blood effects. It just makes the sound effect of you basically beating your opponent to death. Here's another alignment choice. You would think sparing your opponent for one of them, like say your friend, he basically like gives into this impulse, his desire. He goes to the dark side, and he's like, kill me, please." And you would think killing him and sparing him this fate would be, alright, that's probably the good options. Nope. Killing him actually puts you into the negative karma, and Jonathan kind of calls you out, like what? Why would you kill him? Like, but they said like, hey, like no, like doing this is like actually sparing him. And if you actually try to spare him, it grants you good karma. Like, oh yeah, you're trying to spare your friend, but you can't save him no matter what. And making these choices throughout the game, depending on how you answer, will, like I said, affect your alignment. And if you have above 8 karma and good, you're locked into the lawful route. And if you get a negative 8 or lower in chaos, you're locked into the chaos route. And you'll have different endings where you just kind of go against whatever side. If you're in the lawful ending, you fight Demon Lord Lucifer. If you're in the chaotic ending, you fight the Chariot of God Merkaba. And I believe the archangels Uriel, Raphael, Gabriel, and Michael. You fight them. And what else? I believe you try to take the war against God, because that's what Lucifer pretty much does in a lot of SMT games. You also fight some exclusive bosses on each route. Case in point, in the lawful routes, you fight Mestema, who's more on the lines of good. He's lawful, but he's kind of like lawful neutral. Whereas like he doesn't want to interfere with humanity, which probably makes him good, because in the DLCs, spoilers for the game, like if you face the DLCs, you fight Uriel, Raphael, Michael, and Gabriel, because they're basically trying to enact what they perceive as God's plan, I'm assuming, because they don't really go into it. Like, we are God's will, we're going to carry this out. And Messima is like, no, I'm the one truly carrying out God's will. Our case in point, I'll probably put a record scratch or something, because everyone in that game pronounces it as that. You don't really pronounce it as God. You say God, but it's like the actual character's name. For the characters, if you pay the DLC to fight the archangels, you go in the past, you spare Gabriel, but you kill off the other two, even though you're kind of given the choice, you're not really given a choice. Or the other three. So that's kind of a problem in and of itself. Basically, like, you going into the past, you kind of prevented everything from being set in motion. But Gabriel says she'll remember you, but she doesn't remember you in the game. But maybe that's because you could make these things like, oh, you have armor on. So that's why your character doesn't look like she doesn't. She'll recognize the armor, but she won't recognize you. But she says she will, and she has like higher dimensional beings in life and all that. But the archangels apparently are like D tier in terms of strength compared to everyone else. Not D tier. Yeah, no, they would be. But going forward, like, you fight them in a lawful route so far. In the this route, you actually will fight both. You fight Merkaba and Jonathan. You'll fight Merkaba and the Demon Lord Lucifer. And they both have 2 phases, and it's actually pretty cool. So you will fight them, and it's like kind of pushing toward the fact that neutral is like the best way to go. Because Apocalypse basically flat out says, yeah, neutral is the best way, because trying to do anything else, like going like neutral anarchy in Apocalypse will tell you like, oh hey, yeah, you dethrone God, but, and you create your own universe, but just remember what happened. Someone may come after you and try to dethrone you and make their own universe, or kill you. Just saying. But yeah, because like for most of the game, I try to go neutral because ultimately, if you're thinking from a more logical perspective of trying to apply morality in politics, you would. Someone made a good comparison. Lawful in SMT 4 is North Korea, and chaos in SMT 4 is Detroit. Now, that's not the best comparison. I think it's actually pretty accurate, but it's also kind of insulting. And that's why I try to go like the neutral route, because it kind of takes the best of both worlds. Like, you try to save everyone, you try to make sure no one truly dies, but I put in air quotes, but like when I say no one truly dies, like you're trying to save as many main characters as possible without destroying the world or going too far an extreme. Because the will of the universe, the axiom, doesn't like God, because it's a higher dimensional being than God. God just kind of exists, and it constantly creates people who are going to mess with him in his designs. Because the universe does not like it being skewed in one direction. You cannot be too lawful, and you cannot be too chaotic. It kind of prefers that neutrality. Case in point, like I said, with Apocalypse being like neutrality, peace is the best option. You want a proof of that? Here, in the these beings, after you get a bit further into the story, getting closer to your alignment lock. These beings known as the White live in this ever-expanding void, saying like, alright, life sucks, humanity sucks, God's going to control everything, so the best way to do this is to erase it. And we're going to show you two possible futures of what's going to happen if you pick chaos or lawful. If you pick the lawful side, you get sent into a crater-filled Tokyo that has been completely blasted and destroyed, with only a few small buildings existing. Well, not a few buildings existing where people living in shelters underground. They are saying like, well, how are you upside? And like a man known as Akira they want you to destroy Pluto, who is like the last remnants of like quote unquote God's will. And he's like, oh, damaging me is against God's will. It's basically a robot that has some form of sentience. You fight it, you defeat it, and Akira's like, alright, here's the river. I want you to open expanse and let demons roam into the world, because look, we need a little chaos. God's abandoned us, and this is what God's will did. He's the one who destroyed Tokyo. We need a little chaos. I'll come into power. I'll rule as King Akira. And they're like, huh? Hold up. Because that's very similar to like the name of the first king of the Eastern Kingdom, Mikado. So someone's going to bring some chaos to the order that God had presented and try to bring about a new kingdom that still has its own rules and set of functions, but it's not under God, and it's kind of following its own thing. And in the blasted Tokyo, where you side with Demon Lord Lucifer and humanity's slaves to the demons and becoming demonoids and all that, they another person, this time a demonoid named, guess what, Akira, is hoping to bring order to the chaos. By doing so, he wants to get rid of Kenji, or like basically like the big demon of this town. It's who's running through like fear and intimidation and power. He's like, no, I want everyone to be treated equally. He wants to bring order to the chaos. So in a case in point, like order is going to rise from chaos, and chaos is going to rise in order, and this never-ending cycle, because it's never going to end, because God and Lucifer are having a giant pissing contest against each other, who wants to rule over everything. And that's the whole point of why I try to show you, like, no. So you want to know how we get back at God? Kill everything. Or not kill everything. They basically turn everything into the void. They want... The whole point of the White is that they're nihilistic. It's like life has no meaning. So they want to like, alright, nope, we're sick of this now. They don't say it like that. They're trying to explain to you through logic. It's like, look, no matter what choice you're going to make, something's going to happen to where a law is going to rise from the chaos, or chaos is chaos is going to rise from the law. So with this situation and setup, the White are trying to convince you to destroy the entirety of your timeline with their nihilistic view.
What part are you on?
Well, I'm locked in.
AKA Sweet Daddy.
In my part of Shin Megami Tensei IV, I'm locked into the neutral route where I'm trying to save as many people as I possibly can because law and chaos are two extremes. Law basically turns into North Korea. I'm summarizing in a very, very hyperbolic term, and chaos is Detroit.
Oh,
But and the whites, which are like these nihilistic beings, they try to convince you to just to end your timeline. It's like, screw God, humanity sucks. You're going to live in this cycle over and over and over. You're going to reincarnate. No, the whites are nihilistic beings that just want to end the universe. Because they say God's going to have control over you. Everything you do is not going to matter because something's going to happen to upend all your work anyways. And you're going to reincarnate and do it all over again. And they say it doesn't, and that's the whole point of like, oh, when they say they send you to two different timelines, no matter what you choose, like something's going to happen, or you're going to make the same choices as you made in the past, or you're just going to choose differently, and it's just like God's design. He has it all planned out for you.
So you know what? Do you think?
And that's why you go neutral, to not defeat anyone. But in the neutral ending, though, you're still going to have to, unfortunately, kill two of your comrades that were with you for a good portion of this journey. If you're with Chaos, you're going to kill Walter and Isabeau. If you're with Law, you're going to kill Walter and Isabeau. You kill Jonathan and Isabeau. And if you're with Law, you kill Walter and Isabeau because they go against what you think, one being a vessel and one just being morally against what you're doing. And that's why like neutral up to this point has always been portrayed as like the best ending for everyone, despite the fact because like I said, like it's neutral. Like you're trying to take the best of both worlds and not try to be against anyone. Like I said, Lucifer just wants Lucifer and God essentially just have a giant.
Oh, yeah,
excuse my French.
Your grandma.
Yeah, my grandma. We're gonna have it because in this universe, I'll explain it to you. There's a being above God in a sense called the Axiom, which is just the will.
He's definitely gonna hate this one.
It's just the will of the universe in a sense, and whatever God tries to do, the Axiom will create a Messiah to essentially just mess with God because he does not. The will of the universe just does not like God. Because, well, how would I explain this? It's kind of hard. It's like, I guess like if you're a landlord and you have a tenant that tries to rule over the building, it's kind of like that. You're the true owner, but that tenant's trying to act like it's the lord over the building. That's the closest way I could explain it, in a sense that it's not trying to make sense, because in terms of power, God is still above Lucifer, but they say that God only lets Lucifer exist so he can cause chaos, so he can cause more people to worship him, so he can preserve his own existence.
Right. So in essence, he created him to show how great he really is.
To show how great he really is, to cause constant strife, so you have people to worship him.
Well, that's the whole balance of yin and yang. In order to appreciate sunshine, you have to know rain.
Yeah.
Or in order to appreciate heat, you gotta understand cold, and vice versa.
Yeah, but most of the time, God's always seen as kind of like the true enemy. It's just because like everything's gonna go his thing, and basically everyone calls him out as like, if you're truly a benevolent God, you wouldn't just be sitting on the sidelines watching everything happen. Because, like, oh, you allow chaos to happen, you allow constant wars to happen, you allow people to die, rebirth, make the same choices, make the same mistakes. If you really wanted people to improve and better themselves, like a benevolent God would, you would actually come down and try to help them. You wouldn't send your archangels down to cause war. You wouldn't have Lucifer basically having a pissing contest with you, excuse my French. And I'll explain this. Technically, there's also fake God in this world, too. How do I explain fake God? Think of something in your head, like the perfect version of something. And if you actually went out and tried to make that right now, it wouldn't be as perfect as what you just imagined it.
I bet I had that chicken and some grease in about 5 minutes. It'd be fire.
It would be as perfect as what you just imagined it.
Absolutely.
You would think that, but when you actually make it,
I'm just
Yeah. Yeah.
I worked last night.
Like, fake God is essentially what someone tried to make in their image of what God is, but trying to make it, it therefore isn't perfect.
Right.
It's called the Demiurge, and it apparently is about as strong as Lucifer, because Lucifer, because in this game, Lucifer and Satan are two separate beings.
Well, yeah, one is the angel, and the other one is the devil, be it the same person, but they're in different forms. It's just like if you were at work and you worked at a place that sells French fries.
Yeah.
While you're there, you're the fry cook.
Yeah.
But once you leave there, you are no you.
Well, actually, within the game, and then within.
I was just talking about beyond.
Yeah, that beyond that.
Yeah.
But within the actual game, Satan and Lucifer are two different beings. You have Metatron, not Megatron, Metatron.
Metatron's I like him.
Metatron is kind of seen as like second in command, or like the right hand man of God. Mm-hmm. While in this game, and I say in this game because I really don't want to upset people or my grandma because she will crucify me. I'll be executed.
No pun intended.
Satan is actually seen as like the true right hand of God, because when you go against God in Apocalypse, Satan's like, if you're truly God, it is up to me to test you. As someone who's like, that's what one of the close, but I'm probably butchering it.
Well, that's one of the things that when Jesus was fasting for like 40 days and 40 nights, the devil, Satan, Lucifer, went up to him and like, and he says, man, you can't tempt God. He looked at him like, almost like, how dare you try to, if you're God, why don't you prove it? How about you do this? He was like, I'm God. Why would I have to prove that to you? Why would I fall to the temptation of somebody beneath me?
That's like,
but almost arrogant, narcissistic, even.
Yeah, that's why that's why Lucifer and Satan are like two different beings that exist in the game.
If you use perspective in it though, like a Christian would be like, wow, that was dope. He says, man, you're beneath. Why would I answer the questions of somebody beneath me?
But
and then other people would be
like,
it's kind of narcissistic.
That's the whole point of.
Why would I have to speak to you? That's almost like me walking into McDonald's and somebody be like, how can I help you today? How dare you ask me what I want today?
You peasant.
Yeah, you peasant.
That's the whole point. God, or in this case, they don't really have a pronunciation of the game, of the creator's name. They call him like every time they say his name, so they literally just play like a record scratch.
Wasn't that kind of like Men in Black? When those little things look like roaches or shrimps or whatever, and they was like, oh, this is Zerlerek and Bob.
Well, the reason why is because, well, in the games, like, no one really knows how to pronounce it. I think it's pronounced like YHYH.
I like that.
I think it's called like, if you want to get like the closest pronunciation, it's like Yahweh or something.
Or kind of like that one place near Arizona called Zizik.
It's
like ZZYXX.
Yeah, it's like a weird pronunciation, but like that's case of point. Like you can see, it's like that's the whole point. Like God's kind of like arrogant in this universe, and he's not a perfect being, but God will always come back even if you kill him, because he has died twice in this universe. Because someone has killed him, and he's come back. He's like, as long as humanity still believes in something akin to a god, I'm going to come back. Case in point, that's why Lucifer says, like, you'll never really kill me. Because, like, as long as someone believes in God, they'll believe in someone like me that will oppose him.
Very, very deep in concept. Very deep.
Yeah.
I gotta go get you done.
Yeah, like, that's kind of me talking about, like, the whole, not philosophy, kind of like the whole routes of, like, me kind of overthinking Shin Megami Tensei IV in a nutshell. Maybe I'll do an actual in-depth review of the game, because right now I'm just kind of like, this is my obsession. I haven't beaten the game yet. I'm not going to go through all the routes. Stay neutral, because the extremes are worse in my opinion. In the future, if I get Apocalypse, which is like $100 right now on Amazon, So unless I earn some money, like helping my aunt out and producing and like buying it off Amazon that way, I feel like that's the only way I'm going to experience 4 and then buy all the DLC and like get all that. There's some characters that are shown here that appear later in the series. Well, mainly for an Apocalypse. For Apocalypse being the Zomi. She comes up in Apocalypse as she's more of a side character. She doesn't even get her own portrait, but she does get like her own unique like battle sprite. Yeah. That's just me talking about Shin Megami Tensei IV. If I do an actual in-depth review of the game later, I probably will after I beat it in the trial and kind of explain the story and like the game mechanics and all that. But with that, my name is Omega Zero. I'll catch you guys later.